with psychologists. I don't like them as a whole. I'll tell you some of my scenarios. I've had conversations with psychologists. There's a couple good ones, but there's a lot of them who I don't like. And their ideas, you raise children, don't put standards on, don't put pressure on them. How are they going to perform without pressure? Do you have pressure to perform in your business? Because I certainly do. I certainly do.
Pressure makes diamonds.
You think I didn't have pressure to perform when I sat down with the BBC and they tried to set me up? You think I didn't realize instantly? Okay, war. She's ready. You think there's no pressure? You think there's no pressure when they try and stab you to death? There's no pressure in life. You're going to raise a child and say, give him no pressure, give him no standards, so he can just be a kid. And what's he going to mold into? Absolutely and utterly not. Life is pressure, especially as a man. You need to have these exacting standards. That's how it is. My whole life was a pressure to perform to my last name. That's all it's ever been. I don't know how anyone's raised any other way. So yeah, it's crazy. It's a very difficult problem to fix. I agree with you. It's a very difficult problem to fix. But I think it starts with baseline things. And this is also why I feel like I have such a duty to act. I'll give you an example. If I could lie right now for $10 million and nobody would find out, nobody, I still couldn't do it because God would know and he'd punish me sooner or later. I really, truly believe that I would pay the price for that lie. I truly believe it. I think if you're a man and you're growing up and you're saying, how do I act? What do I do in this scenario? What would God want you to do? Tell the truth. You'd be amazed how far just telling the truth will get you. In any situation, I can give you benign situations that don't even matter. Your girlfriend caught you. Oh, and no, and I barely know her. Just say, yes, sorry. I love you. I'd love to stay together. But you did this. Sorry. I'm leaving. Okay, goodbye. Next day she's back. You just tell the truth. It could have gone on for weeks. She could have kept spying. She could have called the girl. All this drama. Just sometimes in life, you just man up and tell the truth. That's why in my current scenario, and I was saying earlier,
that's the only way you're free, by the way.
Yeah, completely.
Only way you're free.
Truth shall set you free.
It shall set you free. When I was saying earlier, the incompetence of my enemies is scaring me, and I don't know exactly what to do. All I can do is just tell the truth all the time. I'm going to tell the truth all the time. I'm going to say what I mean and mean what I say, and I'm going to tell the truth, and that's who I'm going to be. That's what I think is the best thing for me to do in the current scenario. But we're not even instilling that in children anymore. We're not even telling children how important it is to not lie.
Well, but that's also part of what you're talking about. I want to show you the stat because a guy sent it to me. And then we'll put this for the audience to see as well. Percentage of gun ownership from 1972 till today. Same thing.
Exactly the same.
If you look at the numbers, pretty much the same thing. So what's been the biggest difference is a lot of these things that we just talked about. By the way, that question you asked from 1950 till today, the candidate that's talking about this, again, I went back to politics, RFK is talking about this. Yeah. And I think it's a very important thing to talk about because it's making people go research and see for themselves and to ask the question, what really did change?
Completely.
We've had this all the time.
Completely.
What became legal? Why are we adding all these pharmaceuticals to, kiss the tape?
Yeah.
What else would it be outside of that? So that was the foundation, which I agree with you. Household values, principles, kids, men, raising them better.
Yeah.
What else would you see as a challenge from an outside? And then I got part two of the question for you.
Yeah, it's
anything else where you say, XYZ would also, by the way, I love the way you say Nissan and status. I just love the way you pronounce those two words, man. For a second you said Nissan, I'm like, what is Nissan? And then I realized what you're talking about.
Well, I remember when I was young, other people's parents would tell me off. Do you remember that? Did you ever get that when you were young?
Of course.
Other people's parents would come up and you better not. Random adults would just tell me off. I was scared of every grown-up. Every grown-up had a degree of authority. Just random adults. We can't do that anymore. There was just a degree of community that's certainly not really lost. And asking me how to bring it back is difficult. It's very hard. And that's one of the reasons why I've become so religious recently, because I think that God is definitely part of that. And that's also the reason I want to live in the clan I live in. That's why it is. My brother can tell my kids off, no problem. If I came home and Tristan's like, I had to scream it all, I'd be like, good. I trust him in his judgment. Good. Scream at them then. Good. They're children. Also, sometimes, you know what? Kids need to be yelled at sometimes. Why not yell at them? What are they going to do? So life's hard. Life's hard. The way we pander and baby children, especially, is insane. I was talking about this the other day. I was talking about how I have a pet peeve, and one of my pet peeves is painkillers. And I was being typical me, and I was going over the top. But I was saying, I was discussing with this guy. This guy said, have you got any aspirin? I said, there's no aspirin in my house. And he said, why? I said, brother, you are not facing 1% of the life difficulties I am facing. Think about it. No government's trying to lock you up. The Matrix isn't after you. They're not trying to frame you. Nobody wants you dead. When God finally gives you a tiny headache, to give you something to show you're half a man, a little bit of resilience. You pussy out and take an aspirin. Can't you just have a headache? Just have a headache. And not only just have a headache and don't mention it, because I don't care. So don't even talk about it. Nobody needs to know. Just have a headache and be quiet.
I have a headache, Twitter.
Yeah. What do you want? Do you want therapy? You want sympathy? Nobody cares you have a headache. Shut up. It kind of goes back into my original conversation when I was saying I don't like psychotherapists and all their garbage, because they're constantly, I don't believe in, I've had conversations with therapists a few times, and my biggest detractors and enemies say, you need to talk to a therapist. The last conversation I had with a therapist didn't go very well. I said I didn't believe in most of their field and that it was garbage. And she said, why? And I said, because there are some boys who don't drink alcohol because their dad was an alcoholic, and there are some boys who are alcoholics because their dad was an alcoholic. You have the same scenario and different outcomes. So I don't believe in it. And she said, well, no, it's not an exact science, but we have generalized rules that we can follow that lead to patterns of behavior. I said, but I'm not a generalized person. I'm an exceptional person. So everything you've learned and everyone you've ever spoken to and everything in your books does not apply to me, because I'm exceptional and I'm smarter than you and I've done things you could never do, and I'm a world champion athlete and I'm richer than you'll ever be. So nothing you know can possibly apply to my mindset. So why are we sitting here talking?
What was the reaction?
She just wrote things down on a piece of paper. Probably called me an arrogant piece of shit. Probably said don't like this guy.
Complete narcissist,
Yeah, 100%,
egomaniac,
100%.
Who knows what's going on
But
here.
I'm right.
Yeah.
There's nothing you've learned in your
You
book
are
that
exceptional.
applies to people. It doesn't apply to me. It doesn't apply to me. So I don't want to hear it. Don't care. Don't care. And this whole idea, this goes back to the thing about painkillers. That's something I didn't just make up. That's from my dad. I remember being at my friend's house, and I remember him saying I need an aspirin, and he had an aspirin. I remember just being a child and coming home and saying I want an aspirin. I remember my dad going, for what? You're a kid. Shut up. No, you're not popping pills. And I remember my mother going, it's only an aspirin. No, well, nothing wrong with you. Your body is going to go through the same damage it's suffering, if any at all, whether you feel the pain or not. Man up, get over it. It comes down to the details. It's like if you're a professional fighter and you get to a certain level, your coach, once you've been training for 10 years, your coach is honing you on the details. It's the tiniest details that make you a predator. The tiny things. Mayweather does 1% better than the guy he beats. It's the tiny details. So simple things like denying a child a painkiller when you know there's nothing wrong with them. I'm not saying if he had surgery, you can't have painkillers. I'm saying if he walks in, there's nothing actually wrong with the kid, say no. It's all the tiny little things you need to do to instill pain. You need to instill that resilience inside of them. I was in jail and I could just hear crying and sobbing from every cell but mine. Everyone's in there having a mental breakdown but me. And the scariest thing about my position, and I think it's the position for most people who end up in jail in Romania, because of how the legal system works and the extensions and that, you don't know how long you're in there for. You don't know. It could be a year, could be 5, could be 3 days. That's what messes with your brain. You're like, do I prepare for 6 months of this? Do I prepare for 5 years of this? What's going on? Nobody knows. Everyone's in there having mental breakdowns but me. Why did I not have a mental breakdown? Because I've had too much crap happen to me too many times and never took the painkiller, never took the easy way out, never asked for the therapist, never been a bitch about it. This is how life works. There's no way to the top besides the difficulty and the pain and the trauma. I say I'm really flabbergasted that there's men out here who still believe they're going to somehow become something of importance without it. Of course she broke your heart. Good, good, good. Good. I'm tired of people complaining and crying about it. That's the game. That's the life. So yeah, it comes down to tiny things, even down to painkillers, smallest things. Another thing my dad used to make me do, he used to just make me drink water. I remember being a kid and it would upset me. I'd be sitting there playing chess or whatever. He'd say, go drink 2 liters of water. And I'd go and I'd get some water and I'd start drinking it and say, I'm not thirsty, I don't want to drink the rest. And he'd stand there and make me drink all 2 liters. Now I understand it was just compliance. 2 liters of water is not going to hurt me. Not going to hurt me. Do I really need it? Who knows? I drank a liter. Why do I have to drink all 2? Because he said so. That was the household. If I tried to rebel, I really don't want it, I'm not thirsty, you're going to drink that water. That's it. And it's all these tiny things that instill discipline in you. Over a long enough time frame, drink water. Yes, sir.
Bring that to compliance today, though. Bring that to compliance today. Say your dad is around today,
Yep.
and you're 12 years old,
Yep.
and you're living in Ohio,
Yep.
okay? And your dad is teaching you compliance.
Yep.
And your dad says, okay, so now teacher in school tells you what to do. He's right, he's this, he's that. What is the angle you're taking at that time?
Yeah, and that's another thing that's difficult, because back then it was much easier to say you shouldn't get in trouble at school.
Right.
Much easier than
Today
it
it's
is now.
kind of like a badge of honor almost.
Almost.
If you stand up.
Almost. And it is hard. But my loyalty was always to my last name above anything else. This just depends where your loyalty lies. I think that everyone, when we talk about, we can link back into religion and talk about atheists. I don't think there's such thing as an atheist nowadays. I think everyone has a religion. If you're not religious to God, you're religious to either this woke agenda, or you're religious to a political party, or you're religious to some kind of perversion. Everyone's religious to something. You have to decide what is you're most loyal to above everything. You have to put these things in hierarchy.